impact of the bad weather on your business, do get in touch with us this morning. We're discussing that issue at about 9 o'clock here on Breakfast.
Right now, though, we're going to have a look at the papers with Phil Hall, PR consultant, former editor in the News of the World, of course. How are you, Phil?
Very well.
You made it in.
Yeah, I'm the only one without a cold, I think, in the studio.
Sorry.
Let's have a quick through
I
some
hope
of the...
mine's not too obvious.
Some of the front pages. The front page of The Sun, at the moment, there's sort of sense that they can't quite let this one go, can they? A big, bid fat liars, looking back at the events of the 2018 bid and what happened, what went wrong.
Oh, load of different stories on the papers this morning. More WikiLeaks here in The Guardian. Conservative Party politicians lined up before the general election to promise they would run a pro-American regime.
Pretty much every Saturday we have a front page story from the X Factor. Share rage is the one on the Mirror today.
The Daily Express this morning talking about the crusade to move clocks an hour forward.
Front page of The Independent, nudge or fudge, tougher regulation, they say, of junk food is cast aside as government prefers to encourage better public health.
And the Daily Mail says cloned meat has got the green light. Ministers want to allow unrestricted sale of meat and milk from so-called, they're calling them Frankenfarm animals. Phil, you want to start on the Times this morning.
Indeed, I just think a really shocking statistic that 1 in 10 police officers in this country are off sick at the moment. And the figures vary enormously. I think in Warwickshire, for instance, 1 in 7 police officers off sick, while in Cambridgeshire 1 in 24. Massive discrepancies here, and it's hard to understand why, really. And you look through, the story goes on to explain that for 6 months they get full pay, then for 6 months half pay. Now, I mean, we all got to accept that they're doing a hugely stressful job, and obviously there's a lot of police officers injured on duty as well. But it's a very high number, isn't it? And it seems to suggest that there's a real problem with morale in the police force. And
does the story suggest that it is stress and injuries which is leading them to be?
Yeah, injuries always are going to be there, aren't they? There's always going to be that number, but this is a very high number compared to previous years, and there's no real explanation for it. There's going to be an investigation into it to try and understand why, and I guess they've got to get under the skin of the problem and really examine the impact that working in the police force has on families. It's not just the officer, of course. Right. You know, when you're under sheer the pressure, you look at some of these riots with students recently, and you can imagine the pressure it has on everybody around that police officer.
Yes, I wonder how those figures would compare, say, with other professions, also very strict, you know, sort of nursing professions or the fire service. I suspect that...
Well, I also think there's a comparison with the army. There was very low morale in the army, but in the last 5 or 6 years, in my profession, they've turned around the PR around it. Now the soldiers come back and the people are in the villages waving the flags, as they should be. And you do feel that, actually, we need a morale boost for the police force.
Daily Telegraph.
Yeah, I thought this was an intriguing story. Of course, this is going to happen over and over again, isn't it? Because we've got these huge cutbacks, and we're now going to see the impact of these cutbacks. And in the case of Kenneth Clarke next week, he's going to announce that criminals who plead guilty early will have their sentences cut by up to half under plans that he's going to unveil. Now, at the moment, they're cut by up to 30%. So it's a big jump, and it's an attempt, commentators are saying, to try and reduce the numbers in the prisons. And I suspect this is going to happen right across the board, isn't it? We're going to have to see changes to try and come within budget.
What about the Daily Mail? Labour being accused of failing in education.
Well, I'd forgotten, actually. They doubled the budgets. I mean, it's huge numbers. Money was poured into new buildings, new teachers, new methods. And, of course, what the Daily Mail is saying, and that they've harped on this about a lot, actually, that exam standards were brought down, and the impact that that's had, actually, on teaching and pupils' results in this country. I think it says that in 2000, Britain came 7th in reading. By 2006, it had fallen to 11th. And so it goes down and down and again. And apparently next week, we're going to announce more, further reduction in standards. I mean, it's really hard to believe when they doubled the budget, isn't it? And they're saying that actually the education system became too soft. And I think the current education minister announced this week he's trying to fight back on that. They're trying to give teachers more authority in the classroom. So,
well,
again, big changes.
You're almost back to the way you started with the issue of morale, aren't you? Of how, you know, how teachers perceive themselves or how they think they're treated.
It's so true, isn't it? It's pride. You know, I think they feel that they've actually been pushed to one side. You know, very much there's this sort of PC movement that there were pupils' rights, and I think we've forgotten that teachers do a very, very difficult job and need support and need to have the power to do their job.
You're coming back in an hour Phil,
Look
and we're
forward to
going to
that.
talk about the fight to get consumers into the shops to spend their money this Christmas.
Indeed.
See you in a bit. Let's see what's still to come on breakfast this morning.
Good shot. One more. Yes. One plane.
Looks a bit like it's a knockout, but in fact, it's Mike, not scared of a bit of rough and tumble. Why is he playing footy in a giant inflatable ball? We'll explain later.
Oh, good. Thanks so much, man. Phil Hall's here, PR consultant,
Good morning.
former editor of the News of the World. Good morning. Was it
Good to see
icy
you.
on your way in?
Oh, actually, it was good. No,
Was it?
It was. It was thawing where I was.
It has got a little milder in London. It's sort of wet out there this morning.
Main
Let's have a
roads
look
are
through.
fine. Side roads seem a bit slippery, don't they?
Oh, they still are, absolutely. Front page of the Daily Telegraph. This is David Chater, of course, ex-MP facing jail after guilty plea.
The Independent is talking about the fact that the government might be rejecting tougher regulation in favour of this nudge theory, where they sort of encourage us to take healthy choices.
Front page of the Mirror, looking at the X Factor business. Of course, it goes on this evening.
Did you do FIFA? No. Bid Fat Liars is the headline in The Sun this morning. 2018 traitors named. We're talking about that a little bit later.
And front page of the Daily Mail, clone meat gets the go-ahead. This is all, of course, about the notion of clone food. Free-for-all came a step closer, they're suggesting.
The Times has that story Phil was talking about in the last hour. Thousands of sick note police still on full pay, but we promised you would talk about cutthroat Christmas.
It's just
What
the
are the...
sheer size of
This is in the Mail.
Oh, the sheer size of the sales at the moment and the cutbacks. And the Mail are highlighting that right across the piece that there are huge reductions in the stores at the moment. Partly because obviously austerity, people have seen lower pay rises while utility costs and travelling costs have gone up. But also the snow is making people say, do you know what, I'm going to wait till the weather improves. So the shops are being hit, and we've got Debenhams reducing by 50%, Currys 50%, Asda 50%, Homebase 50%, huge drops in prices. So, you know, the advice at the moment is get out and shop early because the sales are out there, you know, way ahead of normal time.
And they're saying, of course, because of the snow, that people aren't in the shops right
People
now.
are holding back. I went shopping the other day, it was deserted, it was incredible.
How nice.
It was lovely, I have to say.
The WikiLeaks story you're picking up on.
I'm just
the
fascinated
FT.
by this because very, very clearly the authorities are closing in on him, or at least that's what the inventor, Julian Assange, would like us all to believe. I think he's creating a huge amount of publicity, but he is also having problems. A couple of technology companies, big online technology companies, have now closed on him. So one of the main sites, wikileaks.org, is now gone, or has certainly been down for a few days this week. And then Amazon have abandoned him. They're saying that actually some of this stuff has copyright issues, so they're not prepared to host his site on their base either. I do think there are real issues here because I know the newspapers had a field day this week saying how fantastic it is. But newspapers are managed and censored in this country in many ways by the libel laws and also public interest. You know, I don't know if people know that, you know, for instance, military leaders can come into a newspaper and say, you know, this is not in the public interest to print this security issue, and they can put what they call a D notice on. Whereas the internet is completely unpoliced.
Yeah, I mean, you've been on both sides of this as a newspaper editor, who presumably you've been rubbing your hands in glee at stuff coming to you. Now, as someone who tries to manage information as a PR man, where do you sit on the idea of stuff just being churned out?
I'm totally against it. I think it has to be in the public interest. I think just because you're a world leader, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have some privacy. You know, if you express a personal view about something you're negotiating with NATO, that doesn't necessarily have to be public property. I think the other thing is that, of course, newspapers generally do print true information. Otherwise, they can be sued. On the internet, very, very difficult. So there's an awful lot of false information out there, and that's the problem.
Now, we have Chandy coming in a little bit later on from Britain's Got Talent. But the Daily Mail is doing a little retrospective about Connie.
Do you remember this little girl? I mean, she was as sweet as anything. She came second, actually. She was beaten by Paul Potts in the first Britain's Got Talent, and she's still going strong. She's performing to 400 million Chinese people for their New Year celebrations on television in a couple of weeks' time. I mean, in Taiwan, they say she's bigger than Mariah Carey. Her albums sell out there by the hundreds of thousands.
How old is she now?
She's, that's a good question. I don't know. I think she's 8 or 9, I think.
Okay.
The lovely thing is that the family put all this money into a trust fund for her for when she grows up. And what I love about it is at the very end, and presumably you want to be a singer, Connie, she said, oh no, I want to be a doctor.
Good
So
for
here's
her.
a little girl who's, you know, outperforming
She's 10
so
now.
many pop stars. 10.
She's all grown up and 10.
Fantastic, isn't it?
What else have we got?
Well, I just think this is rather timely, actually. The top 5 excuses for not buying a round in the pub.
Oh, yeah.
Go on then. What's
The
it?
first, or things that people do anyway. The first thing is I see this so often. You buy a round, and then suddenly, when it's somebody else's turn, they buy a half or they buy a soft drink. I'll have a Diet Coke this time. They've just been drinking pints of lager. Suddenly, that's the top excuse. The other one is they wait. They say, well, actually, we're going to move on, aren't we? And they wait until we go to a cheaper location. Third one is going to the loo or go for a fag break just at the moment.
Bit obvious, that one.
That is a little bit obvious, but I think it's. I'm certainly seeing it's very common in London, especially when a rounds cost you
Especially in the run
an
up to
awful
Christmas.
lot of money.
Phil, thank you very much. Nice to see
Lovely
you.
to
pleasure.
see you
Good to
this
see
morning.
you.
Thanks for making the journey in. We
My pleasure.
appreciate it. 8:30. Still to come on breakfast.